Hello, everybody. It's Ananda Leeke here with the Thriving Mindfully Communities Summer of Self-Care series. And I am waiting for my dear sister love, Shawna Renee, to join. And I'm going to send her a request. So we'll get started. We're scheduled to start at 11, but all of us good planners like to kind of start a few minutes early just to make sure everything is working. Happy Saturday. I am sitting in my lovely Chakra Castle kitchen. Behind me is one of my favorite paintings that I created while I was an artist in residence at Smith Center for Healing and the Arts at Howard University Hospital. It's called Creative Grooviness. Creative Grooviness is the flow that happens when we surrender to who we truly are. And today, you are in for a treat with our wonderful, wonderful Shawna Renee, a fellow Howardite. She's also a holistic health practitioner, a yoga teacher, a founder of Urban Bushwoman, and a recent graduate of our hey, Shauna, I sent you an invitation to join. I'm going to send it to you again so that you can join the chat. All right, Shauna's joining us shortly. Hello.
Hey, hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. You are one of my favorite people in the universe.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. So, how are you and what's crack-a-lacking in your world?
Woo, it's crack-a-lacking. I am fantastic. Thank you for asking. I am fantastic. I'm just here doing this work.
Mm-hmm.
I'm here just spending a lot of time in prayer and a lot of time in meditation and with my family, just trying to get
Mm-hmm.
clear about what my next phase, what my next role in life will be. As you know, because you and I have known each other for a long time now.
Let me look. Since this,
Right. So that's got to be about 12, 13 years now because I think my son was very young at that time and he's 50
girl,
now.
it was 14.
14. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like a multi-passionate serial entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
with a as a broadcaster that has always been there. So just always figuring out like where I can fit in, where am I needed in this moment. So that's where I am right now, just in this next phase, figuring some things out, like really super excited about the future and what looks like is unfolding for me. So yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll give folks a moment to join us. But in the meantime, I'm going to get us centered. Shauna and I are students of some amazing teachers, including the creator, God Goddess. We're going to call out the teachers that we've had in common throughout, but I want to pay homage to Queen Afua,
Okay.
to Iyanla Vanzant, to Faith Hunter, to so many others, Abiola Abrams, so many other people, Latham Thomas,
Yes.
so many folks that have paved the way and are doing the work and living in the bodies of women of African descent. And it's so very important for those of us that come from the people of color, the BIPOC community, to honor those that came before us, those that are with us, and those that we have the blessing of showing. So let's just take a moment right now, wherever you are, if you want to uncross your legs, because I had my legs crossed,
Yeah, me too.
all cute and everything, and I was like, let me uncross my legs, uncross any part of your body that you've crisscrossed, if that makes sense. And then taking a moment to close the eyes if that feels comfortable. If you want to keep the eyes open, just lowering your gaze slightly. And then bringing to your awareness how the feet feel resting on the floor, the rug, the carpet, the bed, recognizing that the feet are what ground us to Mother Earth. And we all inhabit land that was once and is currently indigenous peoples' land. And those of us in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia, we are on the land of Piscataway people. So honoring the land of our indigenous ancestors and all of the ancestors that came after our African ancestors and all of the other ancestors. Noticing the breath, this breath of life, recognizing that it is a gift. And then taking 3 big community breaths with me, and I'll guide us. Big breath in through the nose, and then let it out through the mouth. Next breath, bring one hand to the heart, one hand to the belly if that feels comfortable. Noticing as we breathe in how the breath fills up the belly. Let's breathe in. And then as we release, noticing how the breath moves through the rest of the body, releasing it through your mouth. Now taking a moment to set an intention for what you'd like to experience during this Thriving Mindfully Communities the Summer of Self-Care series with Shawna Renee and myself. Big breath in and then out. And then giving yourself a big hug, recognizing that every time we hug ourselves for 20 seconds or more, we're activating what I call are the superpowers that help reduce the cortisol level, the stress hormone in our body. That's the serotonin hormone, the happiness hormone, and the love hormone, the oxytocin hormone. Maybe even rocking back and forth, that you were able to make it to this day. So,
Whew, ashe.
ashe,
Wow.
ashe. Yes. So, everybody, you are in for a treat. We are here today with Shawna Renee. Shawna Renee is originally from Detroit, Michigan, the D.
Yes.
You know anybody from Detroit, they rep it like they rep Howard. She's also a Howard alum like myself. She is a DJ, a music director, and an on-air talent for Voices of America. She is carving out her niche the last decade and a half, 15 years, I believe, maybe even 20. She has been actively involved in the holistic health community. And I'm going to let her, in our conversation, go into her journey. So let's start right there with the journey. Where did all of this start? Because you're from Detroit. Just just give us some highlights from the beginning.
Well, I can tell you this from the very beginning. This started when I was a young girl. So as you
Mm-hmm.
said, I grew up in Detroit. I went to Detroit public schools up until high school. And this was like in the early 80s. And they were
Mm-hmm.
teaching us meditation and yoga in school. I remember being 6 or 7 years old in the gym class, and our gym teacher would take us through like what we know now is yoga nidra. You know, you lay
Mm-hmm.
out and relax your toes and your feet and your ankles. So I was introduced to healing, or I was introduced to being connected to my body in a very meaningful way as a young girl, though I did not recognize it at that time or have the language to describe it. It has
Mm-hmm.
always been there, at least since I was a very young girl. And then moving on through high school, I ended up going to what we believed at the time was a pretty conservative Catholic high school
Mm-hmm.
outside of Detroit in the suburbs. But we had this religion teacher that every day before religion class would have us meditate. And even
Mm-hmm.
in the religion class, she was teaching us the power of our own power. She was teaching us that we too had the power to create our universe, in addition
Mm-hmm.
to, obviously, this is a Catholic school, the power that one had in Jesus and all that. So this part of my life, this idea, this healing journey has been going on in one way or another for a very, very, very long time. Um, I remember, uh, it may have been around 97 or 8, being on Howard University's campus. And I lived right off campus, and I was sitting at home one day watching television,
Mm-hmm.
and Erykah Badu's video came on.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
Joe, like this is
yes,
this is
yes,
like
yes.
real like 90s black girl stuff here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Erykah Badu's video came on, and I was like, who is this? What is this? And how can I
Mm-hmm.
get some? That was
Mm-hmm.
that was
Mm-hmm.
exactly what I thought. And so because I was in radio, I was studying to be in radio, and I was working at the student-run radio station at the time. I've always been a lover of music. I did a deep dive. I tried to find out as much about this woman as I possibly could. And one of the things that made her so unique at that time was she was talking to us about meditation and veganism and
Mm-hmm.
stones and the ankhs and Kemetic philosophy. And she was explaining to us, she was embodying what it meant to be a Black woman, a woman of African descent, a young, beautiful, vibrant woman of African descent, which I think up until that point we really hadn't seen anything like that. At least our
Mm-hmm.
generation hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that started it all. Like, if she was like, I'm a vegetarian, I was like, I'm a vegetarian. And she said, she was like, yoga, I was like, I'm doing yoga because I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to get some of that. And so really my love and appreciation and desire to just embody to what she embodied just carried me right on through. And several years later, I was on U Street. I used to love going into bookstores. You may remember
Mm-hmm.
Was it Sister Space and
Yes,
Books on U
sister
Street?
space. Exactly.
So the year 2000, I had already graduated. I was working, very unhappy though, very, very unhappy at that
Mm-hmm.
time with a lot of what was going on in my life. I think I just been fired actually for the first time in my life from a radio station up in Baltimore for what I believed was speaking my truth, standing in my power. And I
Mm-hmm.
was very just disenchanted and unhappy and unsure of what the future would hold. So I'm walking up and down U Street. I walk into this bookstore. It was a black female owned bookstore.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is when you could find something like that on U Street.
Mm-hmm.
And they were setting up for something. They were setting up chairs for something. So I was like, I don't have anything to do. So I just kind of sat there and waited. And a few minutes later, this gorgeous, brown skinned, royal, fabulous looking woman walks in to promote her book.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Queen
Sacred.
Afua.
Yes.
And I recognized her name because of Erykah Badu.
Goodbye. Mm-hmm.
So I stuck around, and I was like, okay, I want some of that too. And so I bought the book. This is literally the copy that I bought
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago from Sister Space and Books. I had it on my shelf for years, and this has always been sort of a reference for me. And from
Mm-hmm.
that point forward, I just learned as much as I could. And then many years later, once again, in a very dark place in my life, I just, the company that I was working for was kind of going through bankruptcy, and it was likely we were going to
Mm-hmm.
be laid off, and my marriage was falling apart. And this author named Ananda Leeke sent me this book because I was doing a talk show at the time. And I read the book, and I saw so much of myself
Mm-hmm.
in the main character,
Mm-hmm.
being kind of dealing with this existential crisis, searching for myself,
Yeah.
looking for something, living in DC, trying to grab a hold to meaning. And I don't know that I'd ever read a book where I saw myself in a character to that degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so, honestly, Ananda, you can fill in the blanks because I don't quite remember. I know we sat down and did an interview, and
Yes.
I know you suggested to me we talked about yoga because I'd also been practicing yoga on and off, but never
Mm-hmm.
really felt comfortable in the
Mm-hmm.
yoga space. I know a lot of
Yeah.
my sisters can kind of relate to that. Sometimes you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you feel on edge a little bit because you're
Right.
hyper aware of your blackness or your onlyness.
Mm-hmm.
And so you suggested that I go to a yoga studio up on 7th Street called Shakti that was owned by two Black women, my beloved sister gurus, teachers, Faith Hunter and Aisha Ali. And I took a class. I think it was my
Mm-hmm.
first class, and I was laying there in Shavasana, and it was around dusk, which happens to be my absolute favorite time of day.
Mm-hmm.
And just as we were laying there and I'm going deep into the meditation, I start to feel the sunshine come through the window, and it just hit me in my face.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like the universe saying to me, the way you feel right now is the way you are meant to feel.
Mm-hmm.
So in that moment, I said, okay, all that you've learned up until this point, because I was maybe about 30 years old at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So all you've
Mm-hmm.
learned up until this point, and everything you're going to do from this point forward is going to be not only to find this place, maintain this space,
Right.
but also to bring your folk along with you because everyone deserves that.
I'm
And
gonna pause you just for a moment because we got some folks that joined us, and I want to just give some shout outs to Martin from Parkillian, Stephen, my brother from another mother in Atlanta, Tanya 33, no, 333. If you're just joining us, you're listening to the Thriving Mindfully Community Summer of Self-Care series. It is a wonderful opportunity for me to share in conversation a journey of an amazing soul sister love, Shawna Renee, and we're talking about her early healing journey and how she has become the person that she is today. And we've walked through her beginnings in Detroit, and how she learned meditation and yoga as a young girl, very fortunate, and then wound up in a Catholic school, and they nurtured that meditation. A lot of secrets in all girl Catholic schools because I'm a graduate of one. And then how she discovered Erica Badu in the late 90s while she was a student at Howard University, and her journey into yoga as a result of Queen Afua's book and her healing journey, making that commitment in 2000, and then traveling that road and just following spirit, following what was in her heart to embrace things that happen according to divine order. Like me sending her this book, Love's Troubadours, and the main character is Karma Francois, who is a combination of myself, a lot of me, and a lot of other sisters that I know. And her journey is a journey of a yoga teacher, an HBCU graduate of Morgan, a woman who's struggling with her identity. She's identified with her career. Now she's lost her job. Her relationships are all over the place. Her romantic life is all over the place. Family secrets, a lot of things that we all deal with, and how she uses meditation, mindfulness, yoga, self-care, music, the support of a therapist, friends, a community to rebuild her life here in DC. So now we got Shawna is laying in Shavasana and Shakti. And is Faith teaching the class or is Aisha teaching the class?
Aisha was teaching that class.
Okay, all right, all right,
So
okay.
Aisha really beautiful way in Shavasana of kind of
Mm-hmm.
connecting you to your power. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was Aisha, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so you're recognizing that the divine is sending you this message. And so you tend to what I've watched in your life is that you get the message and then you make a decision to follow it.
I
How do you get to that place? Because we're sharing here and we've got Taz Life on here. She says, "Peace, Queens,
yeah,
welcome."
that's my sacred sister.
All right.
I am just obedient in that way. I
Mhm.
am disobedient in many ways in my life, which is
Mhm.
why I have so many challenges to overcome, but I am grateful for them because they become lessons. But when it comes to spirit speaking to me about my purpose, I'm very
Mhm.
obedient. I've always known, at least had a very general idea of why I'm here. I've always been very
Mhm.
much aware of my gifts.
Mhm.
So, it is just that when I hear it, I'm like, okay,
Okay.
how I'm supposed to do it or what it's supposed to look like, I'm
Mhm.
not always sure. But I'm never afraid to just kind of jump out there and see it. And what
Mhm.
also drives me more than anything is that if it's something that makes me feel good, if it's
Yes.
something that changes my life for the better, then I
Mhm.
feel an obligation really
Mhm.
to share it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when I realized that yoga was such a powerful tool, especially
Mhm.
for me as someone who, like I said, I had just been laid off. I was a brand new mother. I was going through a divorce. I was broke. I had no clue what was next. And
Mhm.
yoga brought me a sense of peace that I never thought would be possible with all of that happening in my
Mhm.
life. I was like, oh, well, I know a lot of other sisters who are challenged in these same ways. Maybe I can figure out how to bring them along with me. And
Mhm.
so that's when I signed up for yoga teachers training. But I want to say this, I do
Yeah.
want to bring this up because this is very important for folks. I also listen, not only to
Mhm.
spirit, but I listen to people. Now, when I was at Howard University, I did not grow up in the church at all. I only belonged to one church in my life, and that was Union Temple Baptist Church in DC. And
Mhm.
I love that because you walk in and Jesus is big, brown,
Yes.
black with dreads, and
Mhm.
Malcolm and Martin and
Mhm.
Rosa and all of them are sitting behind, sitting at
Mhm.
the table. So I was just enamored by just the blackness and the Africanness of
Mhm.
that church. So I joined that church, and they used to teach a class called the African Foundations of
Yes.
Christianity. Brother Khalid, I think Pastor Khalid
Mhm.
was his name, that was teaching the class. And so we were in the class. It was held in the basement of the church, and he was asking questions. I think he asked questions about the Nicene Council. Well,
Mhm.
4 years of Catholic school, I know.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
raised my hand and I answered the question. And when the class was over, the pastor comes to me and he asks me, he says, "You're at Howard?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What are you studying?" I said, "Communications." He said, "Well, while you were speaking, Spirit told me that you are a teacher." And I said,
Ooh.
"Yeah, no, I'm not." This is me. I'm going to be a radio DJ. I'm moving to Atlanta and I'm going to be famous. But thanks. And I went on about my way and didn't pay any attention to it. Went on to graduate, became a radio DJ. I'm working in Baltimore, co-hosting
Mhm.
a radio morning show, living my best life. And we had this psychic, like astrologer on, you know
Yeah.
how radio, you know, morning
Yeah,
show.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so during the commercial break, we're playing around, and I'm like, so what do you see for my life? And he
Ooh,
said, this radio thing, I don't know about it, but you're a teacher.
wow.
And in that moment, I
Mm-hmm.
had a pastor of a church and a psychic tell me the exact same thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when I knew, again, I did not know what to teach. Teacher, as far as I was
Mm-hmm.
concerned, was standing in front of a group of children. At
Mm-hmm.
that time in my life, I was not fond of children. So it was
Mm-hmm.
there was a disconnect there. But when I was laying there in Shavasana, when
Mm-hmm.
I was experiencing what one experiences when they surrender to the
Yes.
practice,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that's what it meant. You don't need to teach kids math and reading and
Mm-hmm.
science.
Mm-hmm.
You can teach your sisters how to find this peace. And right when I made that decision, I think like maybe a week later, Faith announced that she was starting a yoga teachers training program. Ananda, I had no money. I was unemployed, single
Mm-hmm.
mother.
Mm-hmm.
I called everybody I knew. Can I borrow the money? They were like, to do what? You know, to do what? Girl, you better get a job. Like, you know, like, but
Oh Lord.
spirit, universe is like, I'll make a way. And so I got the entire tuition. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't cheap. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I paid for it, and I went through yoga teachers training, and that was what, like, that's the beginning of this, of what you see today.
So
Um,
I wanna pause you just for a second. You mentioned the word surrender, and this is one of my lifelong lessons. And I think a lot of us who come from very powerful parents, and Shawna is not giving shout outs to the peoples yet, but I'm gonna just say we'll talk about that later. She comes from some powerful people in Detroit, um, and a lineage of people that are moving through the world, and that's what you see. So that's what you a lot of us emulate that, and the ego can get in the way. You know, it can get in the way of you um, hearing and then following and then letting go. And um, Taz Life says Ashe. And I want to welcome Christina from Secret Cacao Garden. So good to have you here. Talk to me about the power of surrender in your self-love, your self-care, and your self-discovery journey. And that can all just be your life, because those are just key phrases. Talk about what does it take to surrender? What does that look like? Because you can say and sing, I surrender all, or you can say Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya to surrender. But what does it look like?
well, I'll tell you, Ananda, for me, I wish I
Mm-hmm.
had some like beautiful flowery story. That was not my reality up until
Mm-hmm.
very recently. I do come from a stock of very um, loud and hard-headed and demanding people. My father is an activist, Joe Madison, so he's been an activist for many years.
Mm-hmm.
A very strong man with a very clear sense of himself and his purpose. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather in Ohio was one of the first Black elected politicians in the state after Reconstruction, and my mother is an Emmy Award winning television producer who did a lot of work in and
Mm-hmm.
around the ways in which Detroit as a city and Detroiters as a people
Mm-hmm.
are full of heart and
Mm-hmm.
purpose and resilience. So I grew up with a lot of that. But I am also a hard-headed Leo. And so a lot of times it wasn't surrender in the sense that I just made a conscious decision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, universe, I surrender. That
Mm-hmm.
happened in the yoga studio, but that was
Mm-hmm.
because every single moment before that, I had to be knocked down. The universe knocked me down.
Mm-hmm.
You know that saying, like God whispers and then he yells.
Mm-hmm.
you know, ish gets real, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It always got real for me because I wouldn't listen.
Mm-hmm.
So for me now, I've learned now, again,
Mm-hmm.
I'm 46 years old. I've been doing this for 15 years. I've been learning since I was probably 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Now for me, surrender just means trusting that
Mm-hmm.
all will be well. That's where
Okay.
surrender starts with me,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that even if it doesn't feel good, even if
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do,
Mm-hmm.
even if I just feel like the rug has been pulled out from underneath me and I cannot get up, not
Mm-hmm.
one more second until something changes, to just know that every challenge is an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for growth.
Mm-hmm.
Every disappointment is an opportunity for me to readjust my expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Every failed relationship is an opportunity for me to examine who I am and how I
Yeah.
show up.
Mm-hmm.
And every opportunity is there for me just to see, to be curious.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing that then allows me to say yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what surrender is, simply just saying yes, checking in before, because everything you can't say yes to. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to be connected. You have to check in. I check
Mm-hmm.
in with the spirit. I check in with my ancestors. In the recent years, I check in with my ancestors like for everything. I called on
Mm-hmm.
my ancestors like, should I sit here and talk to Nanda? Is this what you need me to do? And
Mm-hmm.
when I got confirmation, then I surrendered to whatever this was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's what it is for me. I understand it is challenging for people because we're scared.
Mm-hmm.
The unknown is a scary place to be.
Yeah.
And so we ask a whole lot of questions before we
Mm-hmm.
move. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times we're not even really asking questions out of genuine curiosity. We're just asking questions because we don't trust.
Yeah.
We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust that the universe is working in our best
Mm-hmm.
interest. And so it becomes difficult. But there's never been, ever in my entire life, of all that I've been through, and I've been through a lot that we won't even get into,
Mm-hmm.
never have I ever been led wrong
Mm-hmm.
when I decided to just, okay, this is what you want me to do. I'm going to do it. And
Okay.
I'm also going to going to disconnect from my expectations of how things should work out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a I know that's like a Buddhist principle. I
Yeah.
studied Buddhism for a little while too. That's this
Mm-hmm.
this disconnection from
Mm-hmm.
an outcome, trusting the process and knowing that whatever it is okay.
Yeah.
That's what surrender is for me. Took me a long time to get here though. So I tell people and students all the time, be patient.
Yeah.
Be patient and be kind and be generous
Mm-hmm.
and be gentle with yourself. If you
Yeah.
don't get it right, that's okay. You got,
Mm-hmm.
God willing, a whole lifetime to
Mm-hmm.
get it right.
And there's levels to this shit. You know,
Right.
that's what I want to say. Like, there's levels to this. And speaking of Buddhism, I wanted to give a shout out to Avant Dharma Thomas from LA. Thanks for dropping in. He says jokingly, "I'm surrendering to these hash browns." But
Listen.
we listen. Listen. I want to give a shout out to Venice Dude. Thank you for popping by. Good to have my California folks in the room. So you surrendered to the call on your life to be a yoga teacher, and that opened up so many more doors for you in expressing your healing gifts. And I want to move us into a part of your life that I knew about, but I didn't really realize. I was like, I had no idea that you had gone up to New York and done the holistic health practitioner program with INN or IIN, an
Mm-hmm.
integrated. You know what I'm trying to say. You'll say
Really?
it so I don't mess it
Yeah.
up. Yeah. So you did that, and then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, in your journey, it was kind of all of a sudden to me. I looked up and you were doing um, all kinds of things with herbs and food and all. I was like, when did this? I was gone. When did that happen? And then urban bushwoman came into existence. So
Yeah.
yeah, talk to us about that.
Well, so that was an extension of my work as a yoga teacher. It was
Hmm.
actually an extension of my work as a yoga teacher, and through the learning from
Hmm.
about yoga, being introduced to Ayurveda,
Yeah.
which is sort of like the health element or component of the yoga practice. And I was
Hmm.
really fascinated by this idea that we all carry an energy. In Ayurveda, they're called a dosha, but it's sort of like an energy or a constitution. And
Hmm.
that everything that we do either aggravates it or it empowers it. And
Hmm.
so one of the things that they talk about, that we talked about a lot in learning about Ayurveda, was the way in which you eat and
Yeah.
how certain foods not only affect like your body. Now we
Hmm.
know how foods affect our blood pressure, our cholesterol levels, things like that, but how they also affect your mood, and how then your
Hmm.
mood impacts every other aspect of your life.
Yeah.
So I was talking to one of my fellow students who was also who was graduate of IN, and she said, "Well, there's this school, and you might want to look into it, because they're not only just teaching you, they don't just teach you like about just how to eat well. That's a big
Hmm.
component of it, but they teach you about everything. It's just holistic and comprehensive." And so yeah, I said, well, let me look into it. This might be, I thought this would be a wonderful supplement to the work that I was
Hmm.
doing as a yoga teacher.
Okay.
Because again, I wanted to be able to introduce my people to the bigness, the wholeness, the fullness
Mm.
of the healing experience.
Hmm.
As a Black woman growing up in Detroit, in the Midwest, in a major city where there were so many issues, problems, and challenges, then moving to Washington, D.C. at a time where there were so many issues and
Right.
challenges. Even living in Baltimore at the time when I was there were so many issues and challenges. I knew that yoga wasn't, we were not going to solve our problems just by going through asana
Hmm.
and,
Hmm.
sitting in meditation. There was a lot more to it. So that was why I started to do that. And yeah, that was like the beginning. I became fascinated with herbal medicine, holistic
Hmm.
medicine. But again, here's the beautiful way in which the universe works. That happened in, I think it was around 2009,
Hmm.
maybe 2009, 2010. 4 years later, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer.
Yeah.
And I was terrified. I was young. Again, I had a young son. I was
Hmm.
single. I was essentially going through it by myself.
Hmm.
And there was no way that I was going to do chemotherapy. There was
Hmm.
no, I mean, I was against all of it. And I knew at
Hmm.
that time, thank God I'd had that training.
Yes.
I knew how to help myself. I knew what to do for myself.
Hmm.
That was the foundation upon which my entire integrated healing approach
Hmm.
was built.
Yes.
So I say again, it's like the universe, you have to be obedient. Now I never became a holistic health counselor necessarily in the sense that IAM was teaching us, but
Hmm.
I was able to use that information to heal myself. I am here today,
Hmm.
6.5 years cancer free, because I did that work,
Hmm.
because I knew what to do, because I knew who to call. So that. And then out of that, yes, came urban bushwoman, not in the way it is now. Many years ago, I didn't even know what it was. That was just kind of how I was identifying myself. Like
Hmm.
I'm a urban at the time. It was URBAN. I'm living in the city, but
Hmm.
I'm using all of these traditional holistic practices to keep myself healthy and aligned
Yeah.
and juicy and vibrant and
Hmm.
all these different things. So yeah, that's where it came from. But again, it was just listening.
Yes. Yes.
It was
Yes.
simply listening.
And it's so powerful that you listened. We have some folks that joined. We have Healing Trauma Retreat, who's your sister. She says
Hey,
peace. We have Christina from Secret Cacao Garden. She was also at IIN. and does some amazing things through Eaton and is in Peru right now. Yeah,
Oh,
so this this journey, I looked up one day and I was looking for something to listen to as I often do on Instagram as I'm taking care of things at home. And I looked up and I saw my soul sister love is in Sacred Woman.
uh,
I was like, okay. Wait a minute, look. Okay, because I knew that you were, a student of Queen Afua. Many of us have been. I've been since '92, when I became a vegan in my late 20s and started on this path. And every book that she has released has touched my life in some kind of way. Sacred Woman came into my hands in 2000, right from Sister Space, when I found out I had fibroids. And that's how I was able to turn my home into a chakra castle. And I had sisters around me helping me through that process that were going through Sacred Woman. So you made a decision to do it, to just surrender into the 12-week rites of passage. And that ain't no joke, y'all. Like
yeah,
that's no joke. That is because you're gonna be up close and personal in your stuff.
listen, swimming in it.
Yes. So let's.
Drown, it seems like sometimes. Yes, it was. It ain't no joke. It ain't no.
Mm-hmm.
I said this in a video. There is nothing. Healing Trauma Retreat said yes. It is all. It is, but it is so worth it. A
Yes, it
lot
is.
of work, but it is worth it. But I also
Mm-hmm.
say do it when you're ready.
Mm-hmm.
Do it when you're ready. And I told you, this is a 20-year-old book that I
Mm-hmm.
bought back in 2000. It's
Mm-hmm.
even the text, I think, scared me. Honestly, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's why it
Mm-hmm.
took me 20 years to commit to doing it, because there
Gotcha.
was a lot there that was very difficult for me to understand. I always had things like I've always had an altar.
Mm-hmm.
Since I read the book, I've always had an altar
Mm-hmm.
wherever I've lived. I've
Mm-hmm.
always anointed myself with oils, the
Mm-hmm.
crown of my head, and
Mm-hmm.
my third eye. These are things that are just part of my daily life and have been part of my daily life for a very long time. I definitely went back to the book during my breast cancer journey because there's a
Yeah.
lot of very helpful information in here. But I
Mm-hmm.
decided to commit to it. And again, everything is a story. So I'm a storyteller. So
I love it. Yeah, because
everything
that's,
is a
and
story.
we're gonna get to the Storyteller Collective, that
um,
the Living Out Loud, I think is the name of it. Is
say it
that
out
it?
loud.
Say it
Say it
out loud.
out.
Mm-hmm.
But at the beginning of 2000, of this year, at the beginning of this year, after that ridiculous 2000 that we had, I just made this decision. I was like, I am going to decolonize my entire existence.
Okay.
That was
Mm-hmm.
my promise to myself.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to decolonize the way I ate,
Mm-hmm.
my religion, my spirituality, the way I
Mm-hmm.
moved, the way I dressed, the way I showed up, the way I spent
Mm-hmm.
my money, the way I connected with my family. I was going to question everything. And
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what I questioned. Everything. I turned it over on its head and I asked one simple question. Is this what your ancestors believed, did, said, and behaved? Or is this what your ancestors were taught to believe, say, behave?
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, when you make a commitment to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then you surrender, we go back to
Mm-hmm.
that word, you surrender to whatever it is the universe shows you or presents to you. You have a decision. You either fight it, but when you're
Mm-hmm.
presented with it, you have a decision. You either fight it or you surrender to it.
Yes.
So I was actually following Lauren Vanderpool. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar
Yeah. Yeah.
with Lauren.
Lauren is a good friend. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Queen of Green.
Queen of
Mm-hmm.
Green, and I interviewed her on Coco Mode years
Mm-hmm.
ago, when she first released her cookbook. And so I kind of caught up with her on Instagram, and she was doing these 21-day
Yes.
challenges.
Yes. Yes.
I'll sign up for a couple of these, you know, kind of, again, this is
Mm-hmm.
part of recalibrating myself, decolonizing myself. And,
Mm-hmm.
and Queen of Fool was just popping up every time I looked up. You know, I'm like, oh, like they're hanging around. And, you know, Lauren's like, oh, this is my spiritual godmother. And she went through, I believe she was going through Sacred Woman at some point in the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to bed one night
Mm-hmm.
and I was falling asleep, probably, you know, watching her or somebody on Instagram. That's what I do when I can't sleep. I just tune into something. And I just woke up the next morning and I was like, okay, the next class she has, I'm going to do.
Wow.
Now, I didn't realize she was doing them virtually. I knew
Mm-hmm.
she lived in LA. I knew she was doing classes, the Sacred Woman Rites of Passage in New York. I had no idea. Turns out she was doing it virtually. Once again, I started counting my pennies and I'm scared, right? Because I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is another financial commitment. I'm not sure. We're in the middle of a pandemic. But then I said, well, no, here we're decolonizing everything now. And
Mm-hmm.
this fear
Mm-hmm.
and this
Mm-hmm.
lack of, you know,
Yeah.
if you do this,
Yes.
you have, oh honey, the
Mm-hmm.
colonizers taught you that foolishness because your people knew that there is an abundance of all things from which you can pull from to do what you need to do to heal yourself.
Amen.
So I got the money together. I
Mm-hmm.
gave, again, all in or nothing, gave Queen all the coins she asked for. You know what I mean?
Yes.
and I just committed to it. I told my husband, I said,
Mm-hmm.
listen, I don't know what this 12 weeks is going to be. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like. Let me tell you, the things that she asks you to refrain from can put a strain on the marriage. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I told my son, I began slowly announcing to my friends and my family, like, listen, don't invite me out to eat
Mm-hmm.
because I probably won't be able to eat anything.
Yes.
Um, Maybe seeing me pop up in white, just
Mm-hmm.
trust I'm okay. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going through this rites of passage. And it was I mean, at the expense of sounding cliche, you know, to go would change my life, but
It
it
did.
did. And I don't want to say it changed my life. It introduced me to my life.
Mm.
You know,
Speak on the
yeah.
introduction to your life.
Yeah, it introduced me to my life because
Mm-hmm.
though all of those experiences that I've had prior to
Mm-hmm.
going through these experiences are what makes me who I am. I
Yes.
was not living my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was living according to the expectations.
Yeah.
According to you mentioned the family that I come from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those expectations were heavy.
Happy.
They were very heavy. You know, it's very that you have as a Howard graduate, as you know,
Heavy. Heavy.
expectations are heavy.
In
Um,
DC.
DC,
Heavy.
the expectations are heavy. There's a lot on your back, you know. So I knew I was a healer. I knew I was
Mm-hmm.
a teacher. I knew that, you know, it was my responsibility. I know now that it's my responsibility to go back and connect with my ancestors and bring that
Mm-hmm.
knowledge and that information forward, not only to heal myself, my family, but also my sisters. That's always been a part of everything that I've done,
Mm-hmm.
integral part of it. But I was always like not quite all in.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that looked like. It was
Mm-hmm.
always there, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know what I looked like. So it was almost like the rites of passage. Spirit came down and was like, okay, Shawna over here that's scared of everything and feeling like she's got to live up to everybody's expectations. Let me introduce you to Shawna over here who is doing what she's supposed to do.
Right.
And I met her and I was like, okay, boom, let's now be her.
Yes.
Let's be her, and let's not
Mm-hmm.
be afraid of what other people are thinking. Let's not be concerned with what people expect of you.
Mm-hmm.
They gonna get what I give them. you gonna
That
get you gonna get what I give you.
that's always been the case and always will be the case. It's just a part. I look at where you've been and where you're going. It is, and I'm only being able to look at it through the lens of a daughter of an 82-year-old woman, and how my mother continues to evolve, and how it I continue to evolve, and to know that I'm witnessing your evolution and learning from it, because I don't put a age thing, what does 56 mean? What does 82 mean? It just means you've been walking on this planet at this time for a few more years longer. Doesn't it To me, it's like, what can I learn from you? And what I'm getting from you, and you just unpeeling like an onion down to, there's always going to be more peeling, but you're down at a core level of who you are, what you were created to be, y'all, human being,
Mm-hmm.
not doing, because when you are being, you're able to do. And now that you've made this connection, you've had this experience, and we've got so many of your sacred woman sisters on. And I want to give a shout out to Happy Blossom. There were some others. Forgive me if I can't scroll right now without messing up everything on Instagram, but we just want to give you all a shout out for showing up and supporting. You have this community. You have this experience now, and you just released this website. I mean, you just I popped up and I started seeing, oh, so that's what we're doing now. Okay. I'm gonna need me some of that. You know, so talk to us, because we have a little bit more time left, and you know how Instagram is. They will cut your ass off,
They will.
after a point. But I want to make sure that we get in this new website that you just launched, and what's next for you. And don't forget to tell us about the storytelling and the collective that you created, because that's equally important. One thing I love about you is that um, you're very much like I am, in that you don't say no to your gifts. You express them. Maybe not all at the same time, but at different parts, and then you bring them together. So let's go with that.
Okay, so the Say It Out Loud Storytelling Collective, I started back in 2017, late 2017, early
Mhm.
2018. And it is because, in addition to all of the learning that I've done, I
Mhm.
also know that part of I am who I am, and I am free of a lot of that muck, that stuff, because I
Mhm.
share it. I've,
Yes.
I've, I've, I've been a radio host for over 20 years. I was a talk show host for 7 years. Every weekend, I had the opportunity to speak my truth and let it go, put it out into
Mhm.
the universe, and allow it to do what it does.
Mhm.
And during my healing journey, and during the work that I've done with other people, I realized that so many of us don't have that opportunity. And
Mhm.
there is an old West African proverb that says, you cannot heal what you conceal. And
Wow.
so as we carry our stories, we carry our
Mhm.
traumas, it just, they grow and they develop, they become things. They
Mhm.
become mental issues. They become tumors in our breasts and in our
Mm.
uterus and in different areas of our body. So
Mhm.
I believe in the power of speaking your story and telling your story, not only to free yourself, but also so that other people know that they are not alone. I mean, there
Mhm.
is there is like true science behind the power of storytelling in the way that we impact and we affect each other. I can
Mhm.
tell you a story, Ananda, and through the way that I tell the stories and the things that I've changed, I can I you will have some neural synapses popping off that will completely alter the
Yes.
way in which you see life and the way you
Yes.
see your
Yes.
experiences. And
Yes.
so that was why I got into storytelling. And because I've always been a storyteller, but I was introduced to storytelling on stage.
Mhm.
Like, as something one gets up in front of an audience and does. And again, the Leo in me, you know what I
Hey.
mean? I was like, oh, this is
Mhm.
so I started telling stories on stages for other organizations here in DC with Story District, and I, did a Moth Grand Slam and won, and all
Mhm.
these other organizations. But again, very similar to my experience in yoga, there were very few of us
Yes.
and very few of our stories being
Mhm.
told. And we all tell our stories around the kitchen table, right? We
Mm-hmm.
will share our stories among
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, and that's a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I think that there's something sacred in that, in holding a private space.
Yeah.
But we are also part of the larger world, and
Yes.
our stories need to be part of that narrative. When
Yes.
we talk about the American cultural narrative,
Yeah.
we have to make sure that the Black girl story, the Black woman story, the Black man, the Black people, people of
Mm-hmm.
color, all of our stories are part of that narrative. And as someone who works for Voice of America, and the purpose of Voice of America is to tell America's story to the world,
Yeah.
I knew firsthand what was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a part of the work that I do. So it's just an extension of that healing work.
And one thing I want to point out, everybody, is that what Shawna is talking about is the African present practice of the griot,
Yes.
Griot, the storyteller. Everybody has a griot in their family. The person who's the keeper of the stories, those sacred stories, those funny stories, those you shouldn't tell nobody stories. That's what she's talking about, and how storytelling, whether it is in verbal form or if it's written form, like I like to write, I like to publish books and tell stories that way. Poetry, whether it's in your Instagram post, whether it's in a podcast, a video, because there's so many different ways, how powerful, impactful they are. We've got folks that just joined us. Tupac Twin just joined us. We got Tupac. Yeah, Tupac Twin just joined us. We had Massage Nurse that joined us saying, teach sister. So bringing us back to Urban Bushwoman, talk to us about this wonderful new website and what's coming up for you.
Ooh, so Urban Bushwoman, as it exists now, is an extension of that decolonization work.
Yes.
So when I began to decolonize my spirituality and my connection
Mm-hmm.
with God, I
Mm-hmm.
discovered a lot of the African traditional religions, but I also discovered a lot of the African American folk traditions.
All
And
right.
whatever you call it, conjure,
Mm-hmm.
folk traditions,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
herbalist, folk
Yeah.
medicine. And as I started to do some work again, going, looking at my family tree, asking
Mm-hmm.
questions about my ancestry, I discovered that some of my folks, especially my folk who lived in Kentucky, which is where my grandparents and great grandparents are from, in Tennessee, and even down through Alabama, were likely practitioners of this form of healing.
Mm.
And the way Africans and African Americans do healing, we don't just pull stuff, we connect with spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we do starts with spirit, however you
Mm-hmm.
do that. So I began to learn more about that. And as I started to develop my practice, my first instinct was, well, I want to show other people how to do this.
Right.
All of us need to know how to connect to spirit and the ancestral realm and our own
Mm.
internal healing knowledge. And we need information and we need tools. And so I said, well, I've got this urban bushwoman thing sitting around that I'm not doing anything with. How about we try to figure out how I can turn that brand into something, that into an opportunity to not only provide the tools that people who are practicing and learning need, but also the education. So
Mm-hmm.
through Urban Bushwoman, we are a Black woman-owned apothecary and botanica, but we also, I just introduced the Urban Bushwoman School of Herbal Medicine, Magic, and Mojo. So we are focused on herbs, but we're focused on the medicinal, the mundane, and the magical properties of them all, because as Black people, that is the foundation of
Mm.
everything that we know. When your grandmama tells you to go have a ginger ale because your stomach hurts, yeah, the ginger ale we have now does nothing, but it comes from the knowledge that your
Mm-hmm.
great great grandparents knew that ginger will calm your stomach.
Yes.
And a lot of our beliefs, our work, again, conjure, hoodoo, whatever you want to call it, the
Mm-hmm.
African American folk traditions, which is what
Yeah.
I call it. I don't get into those names and all that. That's for a whole nother discussion. But a lot of that, those these things are our birthright.
Yes.
These things are why we are here. Our
Mm-hmm.
ancestors used this knowledge to survive. They survived, had babies, and here we are. So
Yes.
we owe it to them to hold on to that, to practice it, because it is proven. Listen to me, y'all. It is proven, the things that our ancestors have done to work. You wouldn't be here if they did
Mm-hmm.
not work.
Yes.
So if you want to continue that legacy, you have to embrace those things.
Yes.
And that's what Urban Bushwoman is about. So we just launched the site. I'm still kind of working on it, so give me some time. But you
Mm-hmm.
can go to @urban, and I'm spelling herb, HERB, @Urban Bushwoman on Instagram, and follow me. And I got a class coming up next month on African folk traditions 101,
Mm-hmm.
where we're getting into the history, we're getting into the practice. I will say this, my classes are for people who identify as members of the African diaspora. I do believe these are closed practices. This is my personal belief, and so I will move
Mm-hmm.
forward as such. But we will also be offering opportunities for other people to be part of it. Anybody can shop. Anybody can
Mm-hmm.
buy the sage and the Palo Santo and the stones and
All
the
right.
spirit baths and all that.
All right. All right. So in our final moments, I want to ask you, what's one or two things that someone could use to start a self-care, self-love, self-discovery practice? What's coming to you when you hear that? What's one or two things that they
Um,
could do?
the very first thing that you can use is your voice.
Mm,
That's the very first thing. We all have it. It is available. Speak. Speak.
mm,
Speak what you want to see. Speak what you want to
mm-hmm,
create. Speak what
mm-hmm,
you want to happen. Speak power. Speak
mm-hmm,
peace. Speak love. Speak
mm-hmm,
everything into your own life, into your own existence.
mm-hmm.
That would be the very first thing, and I think the most important thing. And I am a huge fan of baths.
Yes.
Get into some water.
Mm-hmm,
Water is so powerful. You can program water to be whatever
mm,
you want. So get into a bath, put some bath salts, pink salts, whatever you need. We different salts for different things, but you
yes.
can't go wrong with a little Epsom salt
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm,
some essential oils, and get into that bathtub, sit there, release what doesn't
mm,
serve you anymore, find your center, take that time, be with yourself. If you do those two things, speak positivity and find your way to some water, you have the foundation of what is a very powerful, yes, Rose Petals, this Taz says, what is a very
mm-hmm.
powerful self-care practice. There's much more to it, but
Yeah,
that's where
yeah,
I would start.
yeah. It it this conversation has made me think about who you are when I think of in in my writing, and what came to me was that you're love's troubadours. You embody that. You always have been. But I'm just sitting here going, yeah. And it's not a book that I always refer to. It's my favorite out of the ones that I've written, and I go back and I read it. But it's not one that I pull out. And this morning I pulled it out just so I would have it. Uh, but I turned to this poem called Ask the Troubadours Who Have Come from Those Who Have Loved. And this is a statement that came from a speech that Lorraine Hansberry gave in February of 1964 to a community of African Americans. And someone asked the question, well, what about loving America? And she talked about, if you want to know about loving America and you want to know about love, you need to look at Black folks. They are the troubadours who have come from those who have loved. And so I'm going to read a little bit of it, because we've been talking about the ancestors, and for me in my life, it's always been very important to honor those that have come before me and to call on the ancestors like we've been doing today. And it's such an important part of surviving and thriving in today's world. You've got to hold on to something, and especially what we've been living through. We've got to know that others before us have done more and have had to deal with far worse. And they made it through, and they are here for us. So this is Ask the Troubadours who have come from those who have loved. Paint a picture of those who managed to shine a glimmer of hope from their weary eyes as they crawled out of slavery's despair with fragmented or non-existent memories of a cultural richness and legacy that was so far from their grasp in a land that was not their own. Tell me a story of those who had little to nothing, planted it with faith the size of a mustard seed, tended it with the utmost care, and waited patiently for what they couldn't even begin to imagine or foresee. Sing me a song of those who love when loving was an impossible reality. Rejoice with me as we watch Creator proclaim that these beloved ones are love's troubadours. Love's troubadours, who should have perished in the midst of their middle passage hell, but instead made a choice and lived to overcome their fiery trials, emerging from the ashes unscathed like the children of the flame Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Love's troubadours, whose human spirits should have cracked under the weight of legislative Jim Crow, but instead drank from the well of faith, constructed by their ancestors for the purpose of restoring their souls. Love's troubadours, they are the ones that came before us, the ones who left us a legacy of faith, courage, commitment, and service born out of love. Y'all, we are love's troubadours. Shawna Renee, you are love's troubadours. You are taking the courage. You are taking the commitment. You are resting in that faith and stepping out. And I always see you.
Oh,
I always see you.
And I always feel your energy, no matter what it is, no matter where I am. It is always there. I always can count on a message from Ananda that says, I affirm your highest.
Good.
I know I'm getting that blessing if I don't get met now.
Right.
It means the world to me. It really, truly does, to be seen for this work that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
and I say we,
Mm-hmm.
because again, I wouldn't have started this if you hadn't written that book.
Yeah.
I never seen myself Ananda before I read that book.
Yeah.
And like you said, karma. I saw myself in her, and she lit. The way was there. The way was there. Yeah. So I appreciate you for answering the call as an author and putting those words on paper and being courageous enough to release that into the world, because again, we never know. We never know who our work is.
And that was born after seeing Faith teach, and taking a class and having her play Love Jones. And me, because I was about to get my money back from Flow Yoga Center in 2005. I was like, I ain't doing this shit. I was against yoga studios. I actually learned yoga from two women from Detroit, two Black yoga teachers we were on a trip with Tony Browder in 95 to Kemet, and we were sailing down, and I was stressed as fuck in my job, and I knew shit was falling the fuck apart. I just was not brave enough to step up. Well, they taught me yoga, and then I was in a community of women that were working with Iyanla and First Sundays, and I came to them, and I was always crying, and they were like, you need to learn yoga. So Gloria came to my house and taught me one-on-one, and that's how I learned. I learned that it was, an emotional release, because I was always crying through yoga. And then Spirit kept saying, you need to be a yoga teacher. And I was like, oh, hell no. And then, when I went, I saw nothing but, white women, and I didn't see the manifestation of someone. I had been looking at Yoga Journal, and then I saw Faith, and I took her class, and she had played Kanye. She had played so many things.
Yes.
And she had the chanting music, and I was an undercover chanter, and I went through it, and that was that's hard to believe. And she was telling me during yoga teacher training, because I kept saying my practice is so different. I'm afraid of it. I write, and she said, "Well, your practice could be writing. Yoga is not just asana,
Yeah.
And she challenged me even during the writing of the book. She challenged me, and then to have her book come out this week, Spiritually Fly. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I
if
can't. I'm after this. I'm heading over to the bookstore to go pick up my copy. Yes.
yes, 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 because it's we're all in this together and we're all evolving together. And when one of us rises, we all rise. And that's something that we may not always recognize. I mean, there's a lot out here in social media land with comparison and envy and blah, 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 blah. Or you say this person is doing such fabulous things. There's no way that we I could do that. And I'm here to tell you that we're all human and we all have those feelings. But Shawna is someone that represents and embodies what it means to say, I got this and now I'm going to share it. And has repeatedly done that and continues to do that. And she's just following along like the rest of us. And we're all stumbling and getting it when we get it. And there's levels to this shit, y'all. So just know there's levels. It's levels. And community is important. And the community that you are now aligned with, uh, it's a powerful sisterhood. It's one
It
of those.
I,
Yeah.
I give thanks for it. I didn't, though I went to Howard, I didn't join a
Hmm.
sorority. I
Yeah.
mean, my little clique, but I've never really belonged to a
Hmm.
community. And even as I see the names going down, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, my sister, there's my sister. They showed up. And
Hmm.
so, and we cannot do it alone.
Yeah.
We cannot do it alone. We have a responsibility to our community to lift them up in ways that we can. And those of us who
Hmm.
have been lifted have a responsibility to strengthen it. We can never do it alone.
Yeah.
And I thank you for the work that you've continuously done.
Yeah.
As long as I've known you've been doing this work, especially this mindfulness work, which is so important because even in that space, I don't see very many women of color, but you've
Oh,
consistently been there in that space
yeah.
representing us. And I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. That's one of my I had to release and surrender just a couple years ago that's my journey is to be the one. I'm the one. I'm the one. Shiny, bright, light-skinned Ananda with her lip gloss and her with her hair and her glasses. She's the one. She's going to be the chocolate one, and whoever comes comes. And you'll just have a Benetton-like community. It'll be the world. We are the world. And so I want to close by just simply saying, uh, there are no words to say how much I appreciate you and love you. Uh, you're you're you shine and you bless people and you don't even know that you bless them so many different ways. You touch folks. And I want to also say to people that if you're looking for a community that you can um, let down your hair if you got hair, and you want a safe space online, join the Thriving Mindfully Academy and community. You can go to www.thrivingmindfully.net. I'm at a place in my life where I trust that if you hear Thriving Mindfully and it resonates with you, you'll go to it. You do you, boo, because I'm really answering the call in my Stan Smiths and my crystals and
Yeah.
my big crystal in my kitchen this morning, now afternoon. I'm answering the call. I want to give shout outs to my sorority sister Kamaria, who introduced me to veganism and made me read Iyanla's first book, made me read Tapping the Power Within back in '92, forced me to do it, and it's been a journey. And all those that came today to be with us. Shawna, you have any other things that you want people to know before we sign off?
Just listen.
Listen.
Be quiet, spend
Hmm.
time, listen, do not be afraid, surrender,
Hmm.
move. We are going through a major
Hmm.
universal cosmic shift.
Hmm.
And we, as women of color, specifically Black women,
Mm-hmm.
are being called back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, if you get the call, just take the
Mm-hmm.
first step, and then everything will align. But
Yeah.
just move and just know that everything that you need is within you.
Yeah.
Everything is there. It's in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
it's in your soul, it's in your consciousness, it's in your community, it's in your circle, however it should be. And
Mm-hmm.
again, yes, we are the women, we are the healers, as my sacred sisters say. Urban Bushwoman, HERBAN, Bushwoman on Instagram.com, online. We're gonna start holding classes. So if you've gotten the call but you don't know quite what to do with it or
Mm-hmm.
how, I'm here for you. If there's
Mm-hmm.
something you need to know, I'm here for you. I just consider me a resource, your sister, your teacher, maybe even your student, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm also always looking for an open to
Hello.
teach.
I
So
I always say this as a lifelong teacher and student. I learn as I'm teaching, and I teach as I learn. Like we all know those things. Um, it is something that we could just continue talking and talking and talking, but I want to honor your time and just say a namaste to everybody. And as always, may we continue to embrace thriving mindfully in everything that we think, feel, say, and do. I will see you all on the other side, wherever the other side is. Hold tight. We've got a full moon tomorrow. It's a blue moon if you're into that, and you can look up full moon and see how that resonates with you. I mean, we're just throwing pieces out here, and if you tend to catch something, then that was meant for you. We're just doing what we were called to do as we were made to be. Thanks, Shawna. I love you. See you all.
thank you. Love you too.
Okay.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.